Yama, my name is Elijah. I'm a proud Gomeroi man. I've joined forces with IMPSS to give a platform to our people, to give them a voice and to create change in our country. Always was, always will be.
Yama, my name is Marbuck. I'm a proud Gomeroi man. IMPSS bring light to missing Indigenous cases. It's important that we shine a light on these things so we can bring these people home.
This podcast has been recorded on Gadigal land of the Eora Nation, with guests coming in from Gubbi Gubbi country and Wajak Noongar, Budja land. We want to pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. Always was, always will be. Welsey Lockyer is an Aboriginal man that went missing on the 24th of the 10th, 2022. Last seen at Pipingara, WA, and was 29 at the time of his disappearance. He was a family-orientated young man who would always remain in contact with family. This disappearance is considered out of character, and there is a $500,000 reward for the information that leads to locating Welsey. Today we have two guests. The first is Robin, a private investigator who came into the Welsey Lockyer case and has permission to speak on behalf of the family. Can you explain to us who you are and how you became involved in Wesley's case?
Yes, certainly. A colleague of mine, Mick Buckley, was initially engaged by the family to look into Wesley's disappearance back in February 2023. And they went up there and exhausted all avenues of inquiries. The police didn't seem to be doing sort of a great deal at that time. They sort of ran out of avenues to start looking at. So a bit later on in the year, Mick advised Joanne, Wesley's mother, to get in touch with myself, as I tend to sort of look outside the box a little bit, I suppose, and do things a little bit differently. And so I sort of took over and started deeply looking into Wesley's case and also trying to get other, actions and things like that started as well.
And I guess, can you tell us the full circumstances leading up to and around Wesley's disappearance, including the latest update?
Yeah, sure. So basically the week prior to Wesley going missing, he was on a Rangers trip, which covered sort of Fitzroy and Broome areas. And they had just finished up and had headed back to Port Hedland around the Friday. He returned home for a brief period of time and then went back into town for the Goomela meeting, which we know that he attended. After the Goomela meeting, he met up with some friends at the local pubs, had a few drinks, and that was pretty much it. He stayed the night at a friend's place in town and got another friend to come and pick him up the Saturday morning. We have video footage of him walking out to the car. He looks a little bit hungover, but, nothing else untoward. We believe from there he went home and had a sleep on the couch. Joanne's partner, Pete, went around to see him at his home at about 11 o'clock Saturday morning, and Wesley came to the door, and once again he was a little bit hungover, just tired. And that was really the last reliable sighting that the family had of Wesley. There's been other reports, but we're starting to question some of that information, as Wesley, who was normally very active on social media and his phone and would always respond to messages from friends and family quite quickly, had no activity on Facebook from the Saturday afternoon onwards. That included, posts and comments from his family and some of the other rangers that he'd been travelling with. And there was just no response, which makes us question, did Wesley actually disappear on the Saturday?
How did the family feel about how the police have treated Wesley's disappearance? Is it a mixed reaction? Is it overwhelmingly bad reaction? How do the family feel?
That they are so disappointed, overwhelmed and frustrated, as you can well imagine. Obviously, initially, there's the initial ground searches and aerial searches and that sort of thing. And then basically once that's been conducted, police just really sit back and wait. They may check bank records and phone activity in case there's any transactions that may help them assist locating somebody, but otherwise they don't actively do anything else. So the family went for 18 months before they were even contacted by anybody from Missing Persons Unit. So there were no updates in that time.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
No communication, no nothing. And the only reason that they then got some communication 18 months later was because of the fact we started really putting the pressure on and trying to, find out what was happening and where were they at. And like I said, it was really bad. We had to fight so hard to get them to even respond.
Wow, that pretty much answered my next question, which was, does the family feel that the police took this disappearance seriously?
No, and look, with a lot of these cases, and as you well know, that there's been quite a few boys going missing in similar areas up northwest of WA. And, being Indigenous, the police just tend to write it off as they've gone walkabout. And that is so poor. It's such a poor way to handle it. But it's just so easy for them to dismiss it as the fact that, they're just wandered off and perished, because that's what they do.
Yeah, no one that's loved or family orientated is just walking out in their family like that.
No, and you've got to sort of ask yourself, okay, so a normal person, okay, there are cases, regardless of whether you're Indigenous, Caucasian, whatever, there are cases where people may talk about escaping and running away and hating their life and may go off and want to try and start afresh somewhere. But there's always indications when people are feeling that way. And with Welsey, and by what I can gather with most of these other boys, there was nothing. There was no talk of not being happy. Like, Welsey was loving his life. He was so happy. He loved his family. He was so looking forward to just resting over the weekend and going back to work on the Monday with the Rangers. He'd organised tree loppers and things like that to come into the block that week. So it's not like he was in a mindset where he was trying to escape from his life. So why would he just wander off and not tell anybody?
Yes, that's true. Going forward, what would you and the family like to see happen with the police investigation?
I mean, it's so difficult because obviously the police don't communicate. They don't share, they don't communicate. They also don't have the resources, and sometimes they also don't have the capabilities to be able to handle these cases properly. But yet they refuse to bring in specialists or experts that could assist and do a heaps better job than what they've been doing. They could recruit or request things like army assistance and have quite a few personnel on the ground, experienced searchers and trackers looking, in critical times, but they don't. They do the very basics and then they file it away in a desk drawer somewhere and it just gathers dust.
Yeah, 100%. Surely you'd be utilising people that know the land and know the country out there.
Exactly. And people who, like I said, just specialise in search and rescue, because it is a specialty. And as I said, a lot of the army personnel are trained in that. That's what they do. Whereas police, I remember when I was in the police force, you might do a day or so of a land search, up in a national park, and that's it. You're not experienced and an expert in searching.
Yeah. And I guess speaking of the searches, do you feel like WA Police have done enough physical searches as well as investigations into Welsey's case?
No, definitely not, because they have this theory that he just wandered off from home, and so therefore, considering his height and weight and that sort of thing, then he would have just been in a certain radius. And so the searches that they've conducted are sort of random and a bit sort of spasmodic, I suppose. So therefore, it wasn't thorough. I understand the difficulty of the area up there because it is such a large area. It's not like somebody going missing in, the middle of a city or a suburb. And at the same time, it's very sparse up there as well. It's not like it's covered in dense bush and trees, and even utilising things like helicopters and thermal imaging would have probably been able to at least locate him if he was in that area. And if he wasn't in that area, if the search was thorough enough and they didn't find him in the area, then that just leads you to think that he didn't just wander off, that something else suspicious has happened and he's been taken. So you need to then start looking into the possibilities of, who may be involved.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And this isn't just a New South Wales thing or a Queensland thing. It's pretty common around the country with police just absolutely pissing investigations up the wall with missing Indigenous people. What do you feel needs changing with the police, like responding to missing Indigenous people?
Well, basically, I think, like they say that they follow all their protocols and procedures. I think their protocols and procedures need certainly updating and changing to begin with, because, as I said, they dismiss it too much as that they've just gone wandering off or walkabout, which is not taking it seriously. And they only really actively spend maybe a week, 2 weeks, even looking or putting any effort into looking for a person. So, like I said, the procedures and policies need changing. They need to actually restructure how they look at missing persons searches in general and how they handle missing persons cases. And it should be a lot more thorough. And if somebody isn't located within a period of time, whether it be a month or 2 months, then you should really start looking at the suspicious circumstances surrounding it, as in, is it perhaps a homicide?
Yeah, 100%. In regards to the public and their perception on this case, what would you like them to know about the case personally?
Well, I think, once again, the police dismiss it as just a missing person. So it's very easy for the public to just accept that Wesley's Indigenous and he's just wandered off to another community somewhere and nobody knows where he is. But it's not. It's like, if that was your son or daughter or child and you hadn't had contact with them for 2 years, they just disappear without any warning, how would you feel? So the public really need to show support to missing persons in general, missing persons cases, and help us put some pressure on police and the government to actually take these cases seriously.
Yeah, 100%. Is there anything you feel has been misconstrued by any media outlets that you'd like to correct?
Some of the media outlets have really tried to highlight the fact that these disappearances, not just Wesley's, but some of the other boys, are suspicious and do need further investigation. But the mainstream media, once again, it doesn't seem to be enough of an exciting news story for them. It doesn't even get any recognition, which is a shame. So once again, I think the general consensus out there is that a missing person, they've wandered off by choice and therefore nobody really wants to know about it.
Yeah, that's true. We've been talking about it within IMPSS. There is a TikTok video created by a guy named Ryan Bowker that states Wesley went missing while looking for Clinton. Can you confirm that this is not true?
It isn't true. No, it's got nothing to do with it. Clinton Lockyer disappeared from a different location under totally different circumstances. The two disappearances were not related in any way as far as Wesley actively looking for Clinton. Clinton, I believe, is some distant relative of Wesley's, but as far as them spending time together or knowing each other well, I don't think that is true. So no, it isn't true. It isn't true at all.
It's interesting. Anything for $1, I guess.
Again, it's just creating drama. It's creating drama, and what it does is then it just confuses people. So people, that maybe do have information then start getting, the information gets distorted because they start hearing all these other rumours and stories which aren't correct.
It leads to questioning yourself. It leads to everything, really, eh?
Yep, exactly.
I guess this is a big one because of all the Indigenous people that have investigations pissed up the wall. What would be your advice to a family if a loved one does go missing under any sort of suspicious circumstances?
Well, to begin with, keep searching. Keep searching in the early days, as in do it immediately. Get out there and start looking. Engage professionals. Seek help from people who are experienced in, search and rescue and that sort of thing. Don't just rely on police. A lot of families think that once there's been a missing person reported to police, then they just have to sit back and wait until police do something or locate them. But that is probably the worst thing you can do. Actively get out there, start searching. Like I said, engage people in specific areas that have expertise or know the land or know the locations or can, have contacts within the communities or can ask friends and associates and gather as much information as you can, but don't just rely on police.
On that, how does someone go about finding a private investigator?
Oh, just Google one. They all come up under Google. So, yeah, depending on the location where you are, there's plenty of private investigators all around Australia, and some of them obviously specialise in different areas. And, some of them have contacts that have different sort of expertise as well. We've just come into contact with someone who is a search and rescue expert. So we're certainly going to be utilising him a lot more when we get these sorts of cases. So, yeah, you just reach out to anybody and everybody.
Thanks for that, Robin. And is there any messages from Wesley's family?
They are really encouraging, obviously, anybody who knows anything to come forward and speak up regardless, which is all they've wanted from the start. They've said they're not interested in the circumstances. All they want to do is find Wesley and bring him home. So if anybody can come forward with a location, even if it's anonymous, anything, just so the family can get some closure by finding Wesley and bringing him home.
I did mention at the start, introducing into the podcast, the $500,000 reward, and it doesn't just sit for Wesley, it sits for multiple people over in Western Australia. Could you tell us the details about it, I guess?
Yes, so basically, as part of the action that we've been taking is we've petitioned Parliament for, first of all, we wanted them to create a task force looking into missing persons, especially the boys that are missing from WA, because of the fact the area and some of the circumstances are so similar. We also petitioned for the government to put forward a reward because they seem to quite easily put forward rewards for information regarding other cases. But yet, once again, missing persons is just not important enough. So we pushed and pushed and pushed for that with, like I said, petitions and rallies, and they have finally agreed to it. However, it is, as much as I think it's great and I really appreciate it, it is a knee-jerk reaction and it's also a very political reaction. We understand that the motives behind them doing it is perhaps for their own benefit, but at the same time, we still really appreciate it and hope that it might encourage somebody to come forward and speak up.
Yeah, 100%. And another bit of advice I would give in regards to missing people and unsolved cases, in my opinion, and seeing cases on TV and in Barraville and stuff like that, is write to absolutely everyone you can. I know people that have written at one point to every sitting member of Parliament.
Yes.
And it does make a difference.
Yes, definitely. And also stand together. So what we plan to be doing this year is putting some more pressure, not just in WA, but Australia-wide too, trying to get some legislation through surrounding how missing persons cases are treated and handled. And, obviously the public need to stand up and show their support for that too, because until it happens to you, you've got no idea what torture it is for the families that are missing a loved one.
Yeah. Is there anything to add from you, Robin, at all in regards to the case or to the families or to Wesley himself?
Well, Wesley, I hope we find you very soon because, like I said, your family misses you and we just need to get you home. So, to the families out there that are in similar situations, I feel for you. I really do, because it's a situation where you've got no closure. You can't grieve. You can't move on. You can't do anything. You're always wondering. And just keep searching. Don't give up. Keep pushing. Keep rallying. Keep fighting. And hopefully we will close a couple of these cases.
Thank you very much, Robin. We appreciate it. Once again, we'd just like to thank Robin for her time. It's not easy having to find spare time as a private investigator, so it is really appreciated by the team at IMPSS. Next on, we have Jill, who was a part of our team at IMPSS. She's an experienced cadaver dog handler, having worked in the field for over 16 years. She's passionate about her work in search and rescue, and we are privileged to have her on our team. How you going, Jill?
Well, thank you.
So I guess I'll start with a couple of questions and learn a bit more about you and Mikey. So how did you and Mikey get started in cadaver dog work?
Mikey is actually my third trained and certified cadaver dog. I had 2 dogs previous, unfortunately, not with us anymore. But I started it back in around 2008 when I was involved in training live fine dogs. We identified that there was a need to have both live and cadaver dogs, so it's specialist dogs in their field. So that's how I got started.
Wow, that's interesting. And what type of training does a cadaver dog undergo for detection?
Mikey started his training when he was about 8 weeks old, just a wee puppy. He learned to find his target odour, which is cadaver, and to earn a reward. Anyway, so we just make that into a really fun game for puppies, and that's how they get started. This game develops as the dog matures, both physically and mentally, so we make it a little more difficult, and the training just progresses. Other training we do is control work, so that me and the dog can develop as a team. Both of us need to trust each other and take direction and listen to each other when we're in the field. Environmental exposure is important as well, and so we do a lot of that with the dog training, and the dog becomes comfortable working in all types of conditions and terrains. And yeah, it just develops from there as the dog matures. You know, it takes about 18 months to have a dog from a young pup right through to potentially certified.
And how old is Mikey?
He turned 2 in December.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, he's still a young dog.
And is there certain breeds that work better for working as cadaver dogs?
Yeah, I've had Dutch Shepherd, Springer Spaniel, Labradors are brilliant. And then Mikey come on board. He's actually an Australian Kelpie.
Oh, wow.
The benefit he has is he's just able to work in really harsh conditions because that's what they need to do. So I took him on when he sort of started showing me really good signs of being able to detect. And so I took him on and started training, and he just, he's brilliant. Not a dog that is normally used for detection work, but I do see them becoming more and more popular.
And what specific scents or signals is Mikey trained to detect?
Yeah, well, Mikey was trained initially for water search. So for detecting human remains underwater from a boat. He started on that. And then as he developed, he's now been trained on the decomposition odour from reasonably like 24, 48 hours old right through to now skeletal remains. So he has quite a broad range of odours that he can detect, and he's pretty good at all of them.
How does a dog detect underwater?
In the process of a body submerged underwater, is the decomposition is actually produces gases, and those gases rise to the surface, and they're like little gas bubbles, if you could imagine that, and then they burst at the surface of the water, and that's what the dog is actually smelling. That's what they're detecting. When we get into that, if there was a body submerged in water and then there was a current and then wind factors, what happens is the dog, it detects the odour, and then it's up to the handler and the boat driver, all of us involved in that, is to then work out speed of the current, the depth of the water, and then to where the dog has indicated the odour to where the actual body may be. So it's really, really quite technical.
How does Mikey alert you when he does find a cadaver scent?
So he'll be searching. I'll be watching him intently. I may see a change of behaviour, which he will turn his body, he might lift his nose, will start scenting quite intently. And so I do watch for that. His body language will change, and then he'll basically follow that scent till he can get to as close to source as possible. When he reaches that, or is as close as he can possibly get, he will generally stand there. He'll have his nose at source or as close to. He will look up to me and start barking. So that's my cue to go in and have a look. So that's what Mikey does, which I find that really, really good when we're in dense bushland, etc., because sometimes I can't always see him, but I definitely can hear him.
And have you worked on cases involving missing persons or human remains before?
I have, not with Mikey, with my other dogs, but Mikey's only 2. He hasn't actually been on a case yet, but the other dogs, they've been on several cases.
Okay. And how accurate are your dogs, like not only Mikey, how accurate were your past dogs as well in locating human remains, and I guess what factors would affect the success rate?
Availability of odour. They are odour detection dogs. So if the odour is available to them, they can detect it. Success rate varies in different terrains and conditions. As I said, if the odour is not available, then the dog can't find it. But in training scenarios, they're very accurate. We do in training what we call double blind searches. So that is, I don't know where the training aid has been placed, and that makes a really good training outcome because I have to trust the dog. If I know where the training aid is, I can inadvertently, not even knowingly, encourage the dog in that direction, etc. So we try not to do that, and we always do double blinds just to make it as real as possible.
Do you work with law enforcement or other search and rescue teams, and how does that process sort of go?
Okay, law enforcement generally have their own dogs. They don't call us in too often, but I have worked and do work closely with other search and rescue teams. And really that just happens if somebody, a team's been called to a particular search, and maybe it's a really big search or big area or hard terrain, etc. So that will just generally ring, say, are you available to help us out here and bring a dog or 2 or whatever. So, yeah, we work quite closely with each other and interstate as well. So, great detection dog trainers with handlers from Victoria, and we can work together. So we've done that quite a few times.
What happens if the dog is unable to find anything in a particular search area during a search?
That happens more often than not. We can cover a lot of ground. We can work for days and not find anything. Dogs do get a little frustrated, or can get frustrated, but that's kind of on me as a handler to acknowledge that. And what we do is generally we just don't work them for long periods of time or in extreme heat, or so we'll take them out, give them a break. As handlers, we have to really monitor that and do what's best for the dog. In a real scenario, if remains have been buried for a long time and there's been, floods, fires, lots of things happening, earth moving, then it becomes more difficult. But we have ways that we change our search strategy so that we can give the dog the best opportunity. to be able to detect. And sometimes that may even be that we probe the ground, break the surface crust so that the odour, if it's under that particular piece of ground, it actually can come to the surface. So again, as a handler, that's what we need to identify and work with.
What does a typical search for a missing person look like from your perspective?
Okay, well, if I do get a call for a job, a missing persons, and the only reason that we're calling me if they presume that they're not with us anymore, I do a lot of mapping, checking for, weather conditions. There's a lot of work involved before I even go out. We'll get to the search area. I'll always check the safety aspect. Is it safe for the dog? Is it safe for the handler? Is it safe for everybody involved? And then, okay, yep. And then we'll put a search strategy together that can involve GPS following the dog so that I can actually see where the dog's been and where they haven't been and where I've walked, etc. We map it, we record it. A bit goes into it before we even get to the job. And once we get to the job, there's a lot of work to be done before we even get the dog out of the ute, if you know what I mean.
Have you worked with cases of missing persons where remains weren't found right away? How does the dog evolve over time in these situations?
We train for that. We train for blank searches. So more times than not, we can do, as I said, hundreds of acres and over days and not find anything. It comes back to, again, is your dog resilient? All comes back to training and how we teach them. I actually, if they're searching and they're doing an excellent job, I will actually reward them for doing a good job, whether they found something or not. And then we will give them maybe a motivational training exercise to do just to keep them motivated to want to do this job. It can be really hard on them.
That's interesting.
And our training is evolving. What we did 20 years ago, we certainly have changed the way we do it now.
Could you touch on that a little bit?
I think we've gone into a lot more of a science-based understanding of how dogs actually work, how their nose works, how it affects them mentally, and we take all that into consideration. They're not robots. It's not like a computer that we program them to do this work and then they, they're little beings. So we've got to understand that they're doing something that they love to do. I still research and look at all the new information that becomes available. I buy books, because you can never stop learning about this stuff.
I just can't get over what's possible with a cadaver dog, really. I had no idea of underwater searches. So it is quite amazing that it's sort of developed into this. And is the water searches a relatively newer method?
Here in Australia, yes. It's only just been really touched on in the SAR world as a specialty. These are specialist trained dogs for this particular job. But in the States, there's quite a few, obviously in the UK, there's water search experts, which we've had absolutely the pleasure of having these people come over and train us. And, we love it. It's something that can be offered to the country now. So it is pretty amazing, though.
Thanks for that, Jill. Once again, that was Jill McCarthy from RDV Canine Services. She's also a part of IMPSS. And that's us signing out. Thank you, Jill.
No, thank you. Great to talk to you guys.
The sick and weak is fixed before food and booze before feed.
We just want to extend a massive thank you for the music, Welcome to the Street, written and performed by Topics, aka Kick Clever. Brother Boy let us pick whatever we wanted from his entire catalogue. You can find his music on Instagram at Mr. Drop Topics.